Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 4 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. We give you our predictions, our picks, in the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the 2022 fantasy football season. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe, and joining me is Nick Cap. Little behind the scenes for you guys. Me and Nick are recording 2 episodes back-to-back on Sunday actually. Our first episode of the week on Monday, we talked about 10 players that we love from each of their current ADPs, one from each round. In this episode, we're going to talk to you about the 10 players that we really don't like at their current ADP, players you should avoid in this year's fantasy football draft. So, Nick, how do you feel going back into this one?
I feel very positive based off everything I said. I have a feeling I'm going to leave this one feeling pretty down on 10 players.
Well, the goal of this show is to get you guys down on these players, tell you some guys that you should avoid, because at the end of the season, if you have any of these guys still on your roster, you probably made a mistake and you're probably not playing for your fantasy championship. Before we get into that, if you want to listen to the show, and please do, you can find us on every podcasting platform, including but not limited to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Android Podcast, basically anywhere where you could find the podcast, you could find the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It only takes you about 20 seconds and would mean a lot to us. If you're watching us, if you want to see our handsome mugs or Nick plugging his card business on his hat at Staten Cards, you can do that on YouTube, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. You can follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at PrimeTimeFFPod. YouTube and Facebook PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. All right, our ADP biggest busts. One player from each round that we think is going to be a bust. One player that we think you should avoid at all costs. Nick, we're going to start with round 1. Who's a player that's being drafted in round 1 that you do not want to take in round 1?
Okay, it's not round 1, but it's where their ADP is. It's a player that I said a couple episodes ago, I can't see him finishing at where he's being drafted. I think it's virtually impossible. It's Austin Ekeler. He's currently being drafted as the second player off the board, only behind Jonathan Taylor. He's in an absolutely loaded offense on a team that just drafted an additional running back. They were already running 3 running backs last year in Ekeler, Lountree, and Joshua Kelly. They're adding a 4th piece to that. He only had a 58% snap share. It's an absolute absurdity, an outlier that he finished as high as he did last year. It was because of the bulk of injuries, and he only missed 1, maybe 2 games due to his injuries. He had an absurd amount of touchdowns, which I think he can still maintain, but it's too high for me to say this is where you are going to finish. I think his absolute ceiling is the RB2, and that's where he's being drafted. The other guys in that first round, Cooper Kupp, I trust him more. Najee, I think at the end of the season will finish higher. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson will finish with more fantasy points. So if you're telling me right there, there's 5 guys I think will finish with more points at the end of the season than Austin Ekeler, I can't see myself trusting him as my RB1 and to be the power back in my offense.
And Nick, let me ask you a question here. To score fantasy points, what's the basic thing you need to do to have the opportunity to score fantasy points?
You have to be on the field.
What does Christian McCaffrey not do? He is not on the field. He's missed 18 games over the past 2 years. That's basically missing an entire season. I think it might be more than that, actually. He's had 3 different injuries in the past 2 years. He's tried to battle through them, and he keeps getting injured. This is the definition of an injury-prone player. I know the talent is there. I know for a fact that if he was healthy for 19 games, he would probably be the best player in fantasy football. But we don't even know his quarterback situation. We don't know the offense situation. I know that hasn't stopped him or other running backs. But if he's going to get the volume, if he's going to get hit, when does he get hurt? And that's what I worry about. If I'm taking a guy in the first round, this is the guy that you should believe at your pick, whether you're picking 1 or 10. This should be the guy that you think has the chance to score the most fantasy points for your football team. I am not comfortable taking a guy that has missed that many games in the last 2 years due to 3 separate injuries. That worries me. That is an injury-prone player. He's being mocked at like the 4th pick, and I think it's off name alone. If you switched his name with maybe Joe
I'll give you a guy,
Mixon.
Cordell Patterson. Perfect name you can put on him.
Yeah, but he doesn't have like the longevity.
Mm.
I'm gonna go with like a Joe Mixon or like a Kamara. I know Kamara's missed games too, but Kamara's being mocked at like 18. We're drafting Christian McCaffrey just on name alone at this point. We're not drafting. I know the talent's there, so I'm not saying the talent's not, but when you look at the injury history, how do you feel comfortable? Why would you take him over Cooper Kupp? Why would you take him over Justin Jefferson? Why would you take him over other running backs? I'm not going to take Christian McCaffrey, and I think he's a miss. Like, I don't think he should be drafted in the 1st round because look at Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's being drafted in the 3rd round. So how is McCaffrey still a top 4 pick? I know Barkley's had more serious injuries, but it's a similar situation. So when do we start treating Christian McCaffrey like Saquon Barkley? And if McCaffrey doesn't play like 14 games this year, next year he's not going to be a round 1, 2, or 3 guy, I don't think. I think this is a make it or break it year in the fantasy world for McCaffrey. He goes and plays 14 games and he's still a top 5 running back, sure. But if he goes in there and he misses like 6, 8 games, he's being drafted in round 3 next year. So I'm not taking that risk when there's so many other guys in round 1 that I could trust just to stay on the field.
So I want to just counter it real quick. Where would you feel comfortable drafting Christian McCaffrey?
I don't think I am comfortable. Like, if you gave me the choice between Joe Mixon or McCaffrey in round 2, if I could, and we spoke about it on our Monday show, if I could get Jefferson round 1 and I have McCaffrey and Joe Mixon sitting there in round 2, I think I'm taking Joe Mixon. I think I'm not comfortable with McCaffrey until like somewhere in round 2. If Mixon's off the board and I have a wide receiver, then I would take McCaffrey. I would take McCaffrey over Aaron Jones. I would take McCaffrey over Leonard Fournette. If Kamara plays or if Kamara's not suspended, I would take Kamara. But I don't know Kamara's situation, and neither does the NFL. So I think that's where I'm sitting at. It's between him and Kamara. That's probably where I'm sitting. And then it's like, do I want to trust the injury or do I want to trust the suspension? So that's where I'm sitting at least.
Okay.
Round 2, Nick, who are you going with?
It's a player I'm pretty sure you said you really like this year. He's someone I actually like when I was looking at ADP, just thinking about where he could finish. I can't see it happening. It's Ceedee Lamb. Everybody's loving Ceedee Lamb. Everybody thinks he's got that top 5 upside. I don't think that's possible.
Skip does.
Skip Bayless definitely does. But so I don't hate this pick like as much as other players on this list. His ADP is the middle of the 2nd round. He's the wide receiver 6 coming off the board. The Cowboys and Dak Prescott have not proven they can move the ball down the field without Amari Cooper and a load of weapons on the outside. This year, it's just not the same Dallas team that it was 2 years ago and last year, where Dak was putting up ridiculous numbers. So everybody got a piece of the offense. Like everybody wanted to have a Dallas player. It's just not that same team. There's other wide receivers I take over him in full PPR formats. 2 guys that are being drafted right after him are Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans. Other players that are in that range that I would prefer to have are Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Travis Kelce, and Alvin Kamara. So to me, Ceedee Lamb really should be an early 3rd, really late 2nd round pick. But he's being drafted on the front 5 of the 2nd round. To me, that's just not really where I could see him finishing. I think he's being drafted at his ceiling rather than comfortably at his floor, which would be a high-end wide receiver too.
I think you're right on that. That's a good take. I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel. He's being drafted as the wide receiver, I think 5, I want to say. I think it's Kupp, Jefferson, Chase, Adams, and then I think it's Deebo Samuel at pick 11. The Deebo Samuel 2021 season was ridiculous. He had 1,400 receiving yards with 6 touchdowns. Then he has 365 rushing yards with 8 touchdowns. He is not getting 8 rushing touchdowns in 2022. That's not happening. He's maybe getting 4, right? So you're automatically taking away the 4 touchdowns, which is 6 fantasy points. So you're taking away, I'm not a math guy, you're the math guy, it's 24 fantasy points right there I think you're taking away. He also has said in many, many interviews he does not want to run the ball. His rushing attempts last year, he ran 59 times. I think you're cutting that at least in half. So now you're taking a guy who's still a very good wide receiver. Like, he had 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's a great wide receiver season. But we don't know the quarterback situation. We don't know what happens with Trey Lance. We don't know what happens with Jimmy G. We think Trey Lance is starting, but we don't know. It's still also a Kyle Shanahan offense that are usually talented, but at the same time, fullbacks can run the ball into the end zone. They could do shuffle passes. Like you don't know what's going to happen. You're telling me I could trust this guy over like Devontae Adams or over Joe Mixon or like your guy Mike Evans? I'm not trusting Deebo as my wide receiver 2. I would trust my wide receiver 1, excuse me. I would trust him as my 2 in round like 3. Yeah. Like if you doubled up on receivers, sure, give him a shot. But I think he's being drafted like 10, 15 picks too early based off a spectacular season last year. I don't think he could amass those stats. And it's a Cooper Kupp situation too, because I don't think Cooper Kupp finishes as the wide receiver 1 because he's not going to hit that number again. That'd be ridiculous. So, but I'm much more worried about Deebo than I'm about Cooper Kupp. So, who's your round 2 guy?
Round 3. My round 3 guy is Mr. Mahomes. He's being drafted as the last quarterback in the 3rd round. It's the QB2 only to Josh Allen. For me, I just don't like taking quarterbacks early. He's being drafted in the 3rd round, and that's in the range of guys like Keenan Allen, Nick Chubb, Cam Akers, and A.J. Brown. I know when people say, hypothetically, if Josh Allen or Mahomes were to finish as the quarterback 1, you'd say, yeah, they delivered on their ADP. Okay, but if I told you could take the pair of Patrick Mahomes and Elijah Moore or Nick Chubb and Jalen Hurts at the same round as Elijah Moore, it's very obvious which one you would rather have. So that's really where you lose out on your quarterback. As much points as he may finish with, you're passing up on another guy that will outperform the wide receiver that you'll have to take later because of that.
Now, we are basing this off of 10-man standard ESPN PPR leagues. We're in a 2-quarterback league now. Mm-hmm. Where do you put Patrick Mahomes and Allen?
So the Superflex is completely different.
I know it is. I'm just curious. I'm picking your brain here.
So quarterback, I've played Superflex before. I don't know. Have you ever played Superflex? I'm not sure.
I have not. I'm the commissioner that's now decided to implement Superflex.
So, and if you go off ADP, you will watch Josh Allen and Mahomes go in the 1st round of fantasy drafts because you will need your 2 quarterbacks by the 5th round in order to feel comfortable. By then, you're going to be transitioning into guys like Trevor Lawrence, who's at 16, 17, and you don't want that. You don't want to miss out on having you don't want to play the guy that has Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Like that's the big disadvantage you're going to have. And you could still take the wide receiver upside then like a round or 2 later because everybody's being pushed back in the draft. It's like the total opposite. Like quarterback you can get in a 10-man league. But when 20 quarterbacks are starting every week, you have to draft them early. It's just as scarce as the running back position.
Yep. Round 3 for me, it's a McCaffrey situation. It's Saquon Barkley. And I think where I sit on Barkley is I am not comfortable taking him anywhere. He's avoid. Part of this list is not just do I like their ADP? It's do I even want them on my team? Mm-hmm. And I just don't. I don't want any part of Saquon Barkley. I just have zero confidence in him. I think the Giants have a bottom 5 offense in this league. I think they're going to be down a lot of points. I don't think they're going to run the ball. I don't think they're going to pass the ball. I think they're going to turn the ball over. I think they're going to fumble it. I think they're going to lose by 10 plus every game. I don't think they win more than like 4 or 5 games this season. So I don't want to touch anybody on the Giants offense. This is an avoid to the entire Giants team. You're not going to see a Giant on Nick Giacobi's roster in any of his 4 fantasy leagues at all this season. So maybe it's a crappy reason to say avoid a player, but the injuries the injuries on top of the garbage can of that team, they're competing for the worst team in New York when it comes to football, and that's saying something. And you know what? They might be competing for the worst team in New York in general, and that's really saying something.
Thanks, bud. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So We're going to the fourth round.
Listen. Hold on. Like, at least the Jets have Zach Wilson. That man, that man's a player, all right. He's a player.
Yes, sir. So we're going to the fourth round. I know you said it might be a little ridiculous to say I'm avoiding Saquon and you're also avoiding the whole Giants. Well, I have the same mindset about the Chicago Bears. I've never bought into David Montgomery's hype being drafted in the fourth round as a running back. I told you guys.
He's a fantasy star, though. He's a Hall of Fame playoff running back.
Hall of Fame player. No, I never bought into him. If I'm being genuinely honest about David Montgomery, I don't think he's that good of an NFL running back. That Chicago Bears team is horrendous. The offensive line is bad. The receiving weapons are some of the worst in the league. David Montgomery's all right. Justin Fields is a bottom 5 to bottom 10 quarterback in the league. On the defense, they got nothing. Like, it's one of those teams you completely want to avoid. It's kind of like the Atlanta Falcons for a lot of years outside of Julio Jones. I don't like David Montgomery. The only Bear I would take this year is Darnell Mooney, but he's still being drafted in that Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy range. So, it's still a toss-up even for him at his ADP.
Not for nothing, Montgomery has over 800 yards in all 3 of his seasons, and he has over 6 touchdowns. Like, I see your point. I don't want to Bear either, but this guy's a playoff stud. Like, if you're confident, if you have some real big balls when it comes to fantasy and think you're going to make the playoffs, draft Montgomery just for the fact that he's going to show up in the playoffs.
Do you want to know why he's a fantasy stud? Because they're always 3rd or 4th place and wind up playing the NFC East and the Lions in the playoffs. Yeah. That's why. That's why he gets that advantage.
What is his playoff schedule? I wonder what his playoff schedule is this year. Anyway, I'm round 4, and we're talking about a New York football team again. Breece Hall. It looked like Michael Carter is going to be the guy for the Jets last year. Then they go and draft Breece Hall, and I think he has a lot of upside. But I don't think the Jets offense has a lot of upside. I think they're going to be a bottom 5 team again. Yes, I think they're going to throw a lot of interceptions. Listen, Zach Wilson scores off the field, okay? He knows his targets off the field. He doesn't know them on the field yet. So I don't have confidence in the Jets being competitive enough to run the football efficiently. I also don't like the committee situation. I don't know if they're committed to Breece Hall or Michael Carter. They might run the hot hand. Round 4, like, I don't like. The other running backs here are Josh Jacobs, who you spoke about as a love. Nick Chubb, who I think is being undervalued because I think they're just going to pound that guy. He's just going to eat up footballs in Cleveland. The dog pound's going to be chomping at the bits for him. And Antonio Gibson, who if who's the coach over there? What's his name? Ron Rivera. If Ron Rivera decides to actually like us fantasy owners, Gibson's going to have a spectacular season because he can catch the ball. Let him catch the ball. There's too many running backs I like at this position that's not named Breece Hall. If he was in like the 6th, if he was in the 6th round around like ETN, I'd give him a shot, but not this early. I don't like the ADP. Round 5, Nick, who do you like?
Oh, dislike. I think we're going to probably have.
It's late, guys. It's very late.
I think we'll probably have the same person here. It's DK Metcalf.
I don't have DK Metcalf.
You don't have DK?
I don't have DK Metcalf. Oh, okay. I don't love DK Metcalf, but I don't have DK Metcalf.
Okay, so his ADP is currently 49. If you look at the wide receivers ranked above him, there's no way you would take him over any of them. And there's no ceiling and no floor where I'd feel comfortable with Locke, Geno Smith, or even if they brought in Jimmy G, that I would consider drafting him over them. And with any of those 3 quarterbacks, there's 5 wide receivers, 6 wide receivers in the next round I'd comfortably take over him in Brandin Cooks, Hollywood Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Amon-Ra, Darnell Mooney, and Cortland Sutton. DK is an all-worldly talent. You could argue him as a top 10 wide receiver in this league. But with that quarterback situation, there's no way they're putting enough points on the board. Pete Carroll's reverting to his run-only system, as he should, with that terrible quarterback situation there. So for me, DK Metcalf, I will not draft him in any league, even as a flex play. I don't know if I'd be comfortable enough to play him on a weekly basis. When you did not see Russell Wilson there last year, you weren't comfortable. And even some weeks with Russell Wilson, you weren't comfortable because Pete Carroll doesn't consistently throw the ball. DK avoiding all leagues this year.
I just want to make a counter. In the 4 games of Geno Smith, 5 receptions, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. Russell Wilson did exit that game with the injury. So if I'm being honest, we may want to cut that one out. I forget what his stats were before he left the game. But I think DK turned up after Russell Wilson went out. At Pittsburgh, 6 receptions, 58 yards, no touchdowns. New Orleans, 2 receptions, 96 yards. He must have had a really big one that game and a touchdown. And then against Jacksonville, 6 receptions, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those numbers are pretty good without Russell Wilson. So I don't love DK Metcalf. If I ended up with him, I don't love it, but I don't absolutely hate it. A guy that I'm avoiding is Brandin Cooks because there are so many better wide receivers out there, so much more talented ones that have more upside and ones that aren't playing with Davis Mills. Shout out to my boy Joe out there. The Bears are winning more games than the Texans because of Davis Mills. I'm all in on the Bears, buddy. Bear down this season. I'm going to win that bet. I'm all against the Texans this year. I don't want a Texan. They're on my fantasy avoid list. No Texans, no Giants, no Seahawks, except for maybe like Kenneth Walker. I don't really want Bears. No, I don't want a Texan on my team. I'm not taking Brandin Cooks. They're going to be losing every game by 20. Round 6, Nick, who do you hate?
So I have the same guy.
We may have the same hate. We might.
So I have Brandin Cooks. I have him at 52.
Oh, okay.
But out of all 10 of my picks, he's the one where I actually like him. It's just relative to his competition. His ADP is 52. I actually love him on the season. He was the wide receiver 15 with Davis Mills at quarterback. But for me, the ceiling in Houston is very small. So I listed these wide receivers the last round compared to DK. There's still guys I take over Brandin Cooks. It is Amon-Ra, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney, Cortland Sutton, and Hollywood Brown. There's 5 guys with a lot more upside than Brandin Cooks. So he might have a comfortable floor because he'll have a guaranteed workload on a team that'll be playing from behind. But he doesn't have a high enough ceiling where I think out of those 5 guys that I named, I can see them all finishing as a bottom 10 wide receiver. I don't think it's possible for Brandin Cooks to hit that.
From rounds 5 to 8, I just see so many talented wide receivers. And I see a lot of guys with a lot of upside. And I'm going to take guys that I think have some upside rather than some who I think have a lot less or more downside. I think Amari Cooper has a lot of downside. And I want to avoid Amari Cooper with this Deshaun Watson situation. If I'm drafting on August 31st and I know for 100%, 100% fact that Deshaun Watson is playing, my opinion on Cooper flips. But if I'm at 99%, I'm out on Cooper. Who's the quarterback? Not only who's the quarterback, but when do they build chemistry?
Did you see who they just signed?
No.
They signed Josh Rosen.
I did see that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they did. So they have Rosen. I think they have Jacoby Brissett, right?
Yeah.
Isn't Brissett the backup? And then they have Watson. But you don't know what that locker room thinks of Watson. You don't know what kind of leadership role he's going to have. You don't know what the chemistry is going to be with Cooper. Cooper has disappeared at times with Dak Prescott. That's why he's been traded twice. How often do you see a star receiver traded twice?
Yeah.
That's kind of a red flag to me. It's like the girl in high school that's been passed around twice for cheating or something like that. So that's a stupid Colin Cowherd analogy.
to build on yours, over the last 3 years with Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski there, you were never comfortable playing Odell or Jarvis Landry there. So why would you feel comfortable sliding in Amari Cooper, whose talent is probably equal to Odell?
Yep, exactly. Round 7, Nick. We may have the same round 7 unless you.
It's Miles Sanders. It's the one guy in Philly you don't want to touch.
I don't have Miles Sanders. I almost mocked him, and I was like, wait, I don't want this fucking guy.
No, his ADP is 64.
He hates fantasy. He hates fantasy players. He said it. He's on record for hating fantasy players. And I get it. Not every NFL player is gonna dig this stuff, but come on, dude. He's just no fun. I don't want him.
You know what else he said this year? in the offseason, the biggest red flag I've ever seen in fantasy football. He said, "Don't draft me. There's too many guys on this team, and I'm not going to get enough workload for me."
Yeah, I saw
for
that
me to
one.
be- like
No.
he's literally saying he's not good enough to crack that starting running back. And
His entire stats are based off like 3 runs in his career that are over like 80 yards because there was a hole.
Literally, like his whole season is built on big plays.
He found the hole and he hit it. He's the opposite of Trent Richardson, basically.
So you're drafting this guy as the RB25. The fact of the matter is you're never going to play him as a flex because you don't trust him. You will never trust him as an RB2. And on those weeks, you will literally look to pivot and pick up someone off the waiver wire before you play Miles Sanders. There is no point in drafting him at ADP 64.
He's not even the running back 1 on that team. It's Jalen Hurts.
Exactly. And if you told me that you could take him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, I would still consider passing on it because I still wouldn't want to have that discomfort of knowing, can I play him, can I not? He was cut in a lot of leagues last year, and he's being drafted in the 7th round.
Yeah,
it's absurd that his ADP is this high. The Eagle type's high, but
it is the Eagle type. Yeah, there's risks that I'm willing to take, and that's not one of them. Yeah. I'm very low on Tyler Lockett. He was my guy to avoid last year in rounds like 4 or 5, and he's my guy to avoid around 7. I just said it, like, you got to take receivers that have some upside. I don't see the upside. He's not even the alpha dog there. He's playing with Drew Lock or Geno Smith. He's playing under that bum Pete Carroll who just likes to run the ball. I don't see any fantasy value, and that's coming from a guy who just traded for Tyler Lockett in Dynasty, but it was like a 6th round pick, so that's really around 19. So I'm not really upset about it, but I'm not spending a pick on him. I drafted Darren Waller in round 7 over Tyler Lockett in this mock, so
I would too.
There you go. Round 8, Nick.
I based off the last episode that we just recorded, I realized we have one ADP that's very different, and it's our quarterbacks. In mine, Aaron Rodgers' ADP is 72.
Oh man, you took Rodgers. Damn, I have Rodgers at 10.
Yeah, so
my note for Rodgers is just bum. Like that is my note. It's all caps too. It's just bum.
He's the QB 10 being taken right now, and there is a 0% chance I would draft him over Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford, who are being drafted literally 2 to 3 rounds later. And you would then debate him with Derek Carr because you know that Raiders offense.
I'm taking Derek Carr in every single draft.
So if you take Derek Carr over him, that would leave him as a QB 13.
I'm taking Matt Ryan over Aaron Rodgers at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd rather take the upside of Trey Lance. There's a lot of guys I'd rather play than I'd play Aaron.
I don't even know where I rank Rodgers. Like somewhere around 15, maybe. Like
I would take crazy Kirk Cousins to say over Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and this is fantasy. Like I just don't know who he's throwing to. So we could both talk Rodgers here. Like I have him in round 10. That's just like my player just to avoid because I just don't know who he throws to. And like he's like the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, not named Peyton Manning. So he could go out there and just throw 40 touchdowns to these random wide receivers that they drafted or sign. Like he could make Sammy Watkins a star for all we know. And we could be totally wrong. And this could be the thing that we bite that we bite ourselves on. So if we do, we do. But I'm going to take the guys that I'm more comfortable with, and I'm not comfortable taking Aaron Rodgers because I just don't know who he's throwing to. And at some point, like age does catch up with everybody. I just don't know what he does without Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
So, my round 8 guy is Drake London, and I think he's a really talented wide receiver, but it's a similar situation where Atlanta, I don't think is going to score a lot of points. I think they have a bottom 5 roster in this league. I don't know who's playing quarterback for them. If they have Matt Ryan, it's a different story because Matt Ryan's throwing those balls that I say are going to Michael Pittman now. Drake London has a lot of upside, but without a quarterback, in a non-keeper or dynasty league, I don't see a lot of value. I'd rather take Devontae Smith or Rashad Bateman here.
I 100% agree with you there.
Round 9, who do you got?
I have Damien Harris. His ADP is 84 at the moment. That New England team is an absolute mess right now. They have no offensive coordinator, no McDaniels who loves his running backs. On top of that, they actually said today, we're recording on Sunday, that they're going to feature their rookie running back a lot more, which would put him 3rd on the depth chart as best behind Ramondre Stevens and the rookie running back. He's being drafted in the 9th round. That's absolutely ridiculous. You would need injuries for him to. You're pretty much drafting him as a handcuff in an offense where you don't know if he will even see a feature role. There's no reason to trust him. You could trust the Patriots and Belichick all you want, but for fantasy, there's no player really on New England you can trust.
I'll be honest, I struggled with round 9. I took Christian Kirk here. Well, I should say as my guy I don't want to draft, and I just wrote Trevor LOL. I don't think Christian Kirk is very good. I think he signed a monster contract, which is a hilarious Jaguars contract to add to the list of hilarious Jaguars contracts. He's being paid like a wide receiver 1. I think he's a top 10 highest paid wide receiver in the league, and he's probably maybe a top 35 wide receiver in the league. Again, there's just a lot of wide receivers with more upside here. It's not really a thing against Kirk. It's just, I don't think he has upside. I don't see myself really wanting to play him, whereas I'd rather play like Rashad Bateman. Who do you got around 10, Nick? I have Rodgers. I already spoke about Rodgers. Who do you got around 10?
So I have a different quarterback. I have Matthew Stafford. He's a QB 12 off the board. I think that's where he could finish. I think he has the upside to finish above that. But the fact of the matter is you're drafting him as a spot where you draft a backup quarterback. You're trusting your other 10 guys that you probably drafted before him, 11 guys. Outside of that, I can't see you really starting him. I could see you starting him. Let me not say that because
I think he's going to be a starter this year. I think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Me too.
He's in a rush, but he's going to throw a lot of balls over there. Like, look who they're playing in that conference. That conference is garbage. It's really, really, really bad. It's the Rams and everybody else. It's the Rams and Brady.
I agree, but the fact is, where he's being drafted is QB 12. There are 10 guys I would comfortably start over him on a week-to-week basis.
Who are your 10?
I mean, you're going. This is no order, obviously. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar. Lamar would be really a toss-up. I
would take Stafford over Lamar.
I would take Lamar. I'll take the rushing upside of the quarterback. Hurts, Russell Wilson.
I would take Stafford over Russell Wilson.
I have the ADP here. Let me pull it up.
Russell Wilson hasn't shown me. I'm a Russell Wilson guy. Like, I know he's not on my team, but I'm still like I'm a Russell Wilson guy. But I need to see the cooking. Like, I actually need to see it for 16 games.
So here are the 11 quarterbacks being drafted over him right now. It's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar, Kyler, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. The only one I'd start him over is Aaron Rodgers on that list.
I'm dropping Dak at that point, and I'm dropping Lamar. I'm dropping Russell Wilson, and I might in the real NFL I'll drop Kyler, but not in fantasy. And I might take him over Burrow too. I love Burrow, but I think I would take Stafford over Burrow as well.
I don't know. That's a good debate. I think we should have like a full conversation about it.
I think so. Yeah, that's a good one. I like them both. I really do.
I think when we do our QB rankings, that's going to be very
That'll
interesting.
be a good one, yeah.
But just to finish up the take, at the QB 12 where he's being drafted, before taking a backup quarterback or a guy you think can finish in the top 10, and even where you have him, it's the end of the back 5 of the top 10. Players I'd rather take with a lot of upside: Russell Gage, Elijah Moore, Treylon Burks, Chris Olave, and Kadarius Toney. There's 5 wide receivers where I'd rather play the upside than take a backup quarterback.
I like Olave. He was going around 11 or 12, so I didn't select them, but the good ones. Alrighty, guys. That is our show. We've done 2 shows this week. 10 players that we like, 10 players that we don't like. Let us know what you think on our social media channels. Let us know if you agree with us, disagree. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, PrimeTimeFFPod, Facebook, YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. You can listen to the show on all podcasting platforms, or you can watch us on our YouTube. Thank you guys so much. We're really going to ramp up the content over the next few weeks. At the end of August, I'm going to be in New York for a week. We're going to have content come out, but I'll be in New York for a week in about 6 days. But when I get back, we're really going to ramp up that content, start putting out 3, 4, then 5 shows a week for you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to it. So hopefully you're along for the ride. Hopefully you're soaking in this draft knowledge, and hopefully we can all draft some guys and avoid some guys to help us win this season. Thank you for listening. We'll speak to you guys next week.